Okay, it's just preparing. All right, I think we are good to go. Just make sure there's no sound on here. All good. Okay, we are live. Awesome. Okay. All right, great, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. As mentioned, we're going to just start with a round of introductions. So just to introduce myself first, I'm Rex Bowden. I'm one of the co-founders of Ocean Innovation Africa. I'm an event professional, been taking companies to international markets for years. In the last few years, we've really turned that around and started bringing people into South Africa because we see a massive benefit to show people what awesome stuff happens in South Africa. A lot of that is around Cape Town, and that's one of the reasons we run that. I'm involved in Ocean Innovation Africa because I see it's people do a lot more business when they come into market and get opportunities. So, but we still do delegations overseas as well. My passion is I do love the ocean. I grew up in Durban, so I love the ocean, and I was in it. I think I spent most of my years and weekends down on the beach, diving and surfing and just relaxing on the beach. So I do love it. I've got a passion for it, and that's how Alexi hooked me into doing all this stuff. He is sort of my crutch on that. I'll be chairing today and managing it. Our co-chair, and I'll pass over to Talent, who will introduce herself. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much, Rex. I'm Talent Moyo. I am a researcher and a lecturer at CPUT Sport Management. My specialty in terms of research has been in CSR and socially responsible marketing practices for professional sport organizations in South Africa, as well as marketing performance. So any type of sport really is something that I would be interested in, and sport business in particular, and how it can grow and how it impacts the environment and society in general. So that is me. I think I managed to keep to my 2 minutes there, Rex.
You did very well, and no one shouted at me and told me that I'd forgotten to do the photo. So before we start introducing anyone else in, Bruce, can you put your camera on as well, and Lindsay as well, just quickly to put your cameras on, and then we'll just do a quick photo of the group. There we go. I'll tell you when. All right, everyone smile. Okay, I looked the weirdest there. I'm going to do one more. Okay, cool. Awesome, all done. Okay, I'm going to pass on to Pauline. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Rex. I'm Pauline van der Spy, and I work for the City of Cape Town in the Enterprise and Investment Department. And one of the sectors that I look at is the ocean economy. So our department's mandate is to support economic growth, and to form growth coalitions with the private sector. And there's various ways that we do that. Is one of the ways that we do it, and I think that's relevant to today's discussion, is that we fund SPVs or partners to make sure that we grow certain economies, look at skills development. And then what we also do is we also assist, we provide basic services as the City of Cape Town, and we also try to help the private sector when they've got some blockages to access a very difficult city environment. So we just collaborate and we work together with the private sector to be able to grow the industry and especially jobs as our employment is so high. Thanks a lot.
Awesome, thanks, Pauline. Bruce, can you introduce yourself? And please, just when you speak, guys, if you're having bandwidth issues, please do put on your camera, and then you can take it off when you're not speaking, so we can see your face. Thanks.
Hey, Rex and everybody. Pleasure to be here. Sorry, I missed the first 2 days. My name is Bruce Tedder. I'm one of the co-founders of Blue Cape. It's a non-profit. We have two founding partners, very important partners. The one is the V&A Waterfront, and the other is the City of Cape Town. Invest Cape Town, which Pauline is one of our key contacts. Blue Cape focuses on three primary pillars in the sector, and that is boat building and marine manufacturing. South Africa is the second biggest manufacturer of sailing catamarans in the world after France, so it's a very important sector. The second pillar is super yachting, where we aim to get more super yachts to visit the Cape, to stay longer and spend more money. And the third pillar, and the most exciting, being myself as a water sports enthusiast like Rex, surfer, sailor, lifeguard, etc., is ocean sports. This is a massive sector. 1.5 billion rand a year in the wind sports sector alone. I think we must understand that the busiest beach in the world for kiting is between Milnerton and Blouberg in the summer. And the kiteboarding comps we have, Red Bull, etc., are the biggest in the world. So it's a massive sector. And Blue Cape's main focus is to look at opportunities and look at the skills required, look at the training that's required, because we want to create more jobs and growth in these sectors for the folk of the Cape. I think that's about it. Thank you so much, Rex, and this is brilliant, and we look forward to February next year.
Lovely, thanks, Bruce. Kate, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to join you all. Yeah, a little bit about me. I'm a researcher and independent researcher and advisor.
Your husband beat the crap out of it.
Sorry, is someone talking in the background? I've got about 20 years experience in economic development planning, and I have done much of that in tourism, but also in the green economy and the blue economy. So I tend to work with governments and policy institutes, thinking about tourism in particular and the green economy and blue economy in terms of what's needed to develop them in a sustainable way. So I'm looking forward to our discussions. I've worked across, worked in a DFI as well. So I understand a little bit about finance and how that relates to developing sectors too. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate. Vincent?
Good morning, everyone. It's Vince Shacks. I'm from the Wildlife and Environment Society of South Africa. We are a non-profit, long-running non-profit in South Africa. We've been going for about 97 years. And more related to this work is I manage the Blue Flag coastal program. So it's a certification program for public beaches, marinas, and commercial tourism boats. And our as an organization, we focus mainly on the education, advocacy, and action spaces. Very pleased to be here today. Thanks.
Thanks, Vince. Next person on, Alusha.
Thanks, Rex. Alushka. Thank you for the invitation to join this workshop. So currently I'm president of the World Federation of Tourist Guide Associations. I am based in Cape Town, and we are an international association actually based in Vienna. We are actively working with our members across the globe in addressing and working towards the sustainable development goals in our sector. I'm also currently a UNWTO board member, previously Cape Town Tourism board member, and was SATSA previously. And as a priority, I really see the need for the education element. I think this is crucial with regards to the specific workshop for the ocean sports and tourism. Educating the consumer, I think, is going to be crucial in driving this agenda. And then also just from my side, from the tourism side, and linking the potential of this ocean economy and the related activities to the tourism side of things in a more meaningful manner is really something I look forward to contributing to. So thanks, Rex.
Thanks, Alushka. Next up is Marguerite. Margarita?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marguerite. I'm the operations director of a nonprofit organization based in Hout Bay called Sentinel Ocean Alliance. We run mainly education programs. We have an ocean school where we have kids from the local communities come through our ocean school program. And alongside that, we run a program called Turn the Tide, where we teach kids how to swim. And we also use it as a form of ocean therapy program. We also started in 2018 a development lifesaving club, the Hout Bay Surf Lifesaving Club, which Bruce is also a part of. So I think our focus or our contribution to this could be more around the sports development and getting access to kids to be able to do the sport in the first place. Yeah, so I look forward to hearing from everybody.
Awesome, thank you, Marguerite. Leonie?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me this morning. I'm Leonie. I'm the general manager at the Radisson Red Hotel here in town. Myself, a huge ocean lover, surfer, and mother to two surfers. So I have a big connection to the ocean, and we try as a brand to combine large hospitality with sustainability and to create more awareness how big hotel chains and big collaborations, our big companies can probably do a better job in doing a sustainable, running a sustainable business model. We managed to we're driving a 95% plastic-free hotel. So we normally do not allow much plastic into our hotel and not at all into our rooms. And we managed to do this throughout COVID as well. My job, or I see my responsibility in continuing educating guests and other, hotel institutions about this, how everybody can make a difference, and to also start putting pressure on our suppliers to follow suit, so that we, as big bulk, kind of contributors, can make a difference.
Awesome, Leonie. And can we have Amanda, please?
Hi, good morning, Rex. Good morning, everybody. So yeah, I'm based in the Garden Route, on a farm in the Garden Route, and I wear a few different hats, actually. I, for a very long number of years, have been a project manager and event specialist. Have worked with what was previously World Sport, now Live Company Sports and Entertainment. And I also have a very strong sort of tie to conservation, and run a project. Actually, we're in the process of establishing it as a nonprofit called the Strandloper Project. And we look at basically, it started off as ghost fishing, a topic that was mainly looked at commercially, but nobody really looked at it from a recreational fishing perspective. So we started looking at it from that perspective, and then went into looking at plastics and plastics along our coastline, and microplastics in particular. And we came up with the concept of doing an annual expedition hike where we cover roughly 200 kilometers along the coastline, and we basically gather live data. So every 5 kilometers doing transects, looking at those microplastics, and obviously the fishing industry, how that impacts along our coastline. To date, we have done about, I think we've done about 700-800 kilometers of our coastline. And our next one is due to do our next expedition in October. So that's sort of my marine side of it, but coming in from LCAC as the project manager and sustainability manager for the Ocean Race. So I sort of span making sure that the Cape Town stopover runs smoothly from a sustainability perspective, and obviously that, you know, the involvement of the various initiatives runs smoothly as well. So really excited to be involved in the summit as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. And then finally, Lindsay.
Good morning. So quick brief on me. I'm project manager of Blue Cape, and Pauline and Bruce have pretty much covered the details of what Blue Cape does. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. So I'm going to pass on over to Talent now to start the discussions. Yep, I'll still be jumping in here and there as well. So yeah, Talent, you can take over from here.
Thank you very much, Rex. Thank you so much, everybody. It's indeed an honor to be in the presence of such experts, and thank you so much for this. Right, so we are going to talk just generally about challenges and opportunities for development in ocean sports, and what you think is needed to address some of these challenges and opportunities as stakeholders in ocean sports. So remember, you are most welcome to raise your hand even when somebody else is still talking. If you have a question, or maybe you feel you want to add a comment, or there's something really pressing that you need to say. So it's just really a conversation among peers. Okay, so I would like us to start with Pauline. Pauline, would you like to maybe tell us a little bit about the challenges and opportunities for development from your perspective in tourism?
Oh, Cape Town has got stunning assets and nature, and the city owns quite a lot of space, and we also see Cape Town as a travel destination, as a sustainable destination, as a green destination. We see Cape Town as a ocean sport destination and event destination. So we're lucky in a way that we've got various departments that works along the coast, and have to put either in maintenance or build new assets, or manage beach activities, or we also part of a regulatory environment. We have to get permits. Yeah, so in the one hand, we sort of providing assistance and infrastructure. On the other hand, we do want to see that our coastal areas are utilized much more. We do have a problem with access. People don't know how to access certain activities. People don't know where to access it. They don't know how to enjoy certain activities. And then we also have the problem with wind, and in our winter months, that's quite long. So we have to look at opportunities for those areas, for those times of the year as well, to see how we can grow the tourism industry, or the tourism activities, because you can do alternative activities in the water versus out of the water. Just for example, our adventure tourism industry it's quite big. We've got 81 operators within 2 kilometers from the coast that offers activities on the coast. The problems that they sit with is safety and security, access to sites that they can use. But we do see quite a lot of opportunity in the ocean economy for tourism, and we really need to take hands and make sure that we make it easier for businesses. We have to take hands to make sure that our population understands how to utilize these stunning environments that we've got and activities that we've got. And we also have to get people involved in the industry along the coast. Yes, that's for me.
Thank you so much for that, Pauline. That's very interesting. With regards to infrastructure, is there anything specific that you would maybe give us some examples so we have a mental picture?
Okay, something you all know Muizenberg's new renovated huts, beach huts. So, for example, a new area that we're looking at is Jamestown. St. James, sorry, St. James. And they also have those huts, and some of them have burned down, and that area needs some attention. So we've called a group. So our coastal management department has got a landscape engineer.
All right, thank you so much for that, Pauline. Bruce, what are your thoughts?
Hi, thank you. No real problems. I think we're blessed with these natural assets that we have, the wind and these incredible beaches. I think what we'd like to see from Blue Cape's point of view in the ocean sports side is sort of, let's say, monetizing our beaches in a better way. I think if we look at what has happened in Hout Bay, in the corner where Marguerite is, in a very short space of time, I think it's about 15 or 16 permanent jobs have been created with Waves for Change, the Parlay Ocean School, and the Life Saving Club. There's now a small coffee shop. It's a small economic hub right now, and it becomes a bit of a center for the community. So more and more people are coming there. It's a safe place. It's a fun place. People that used to go and swim in False Bay are now driving from Constantia to Hout Bay to come and do their cold water swimming. Because we have structures in place, more and more events are wanting to come and start and finish and be hosted there. So in a very creative way, we've created a hub there. And now that could be replicated at all of the beaches. I think initially where we have life-saving clubs, where there are already structures in place on the beach with ocean-loving people running the clubs in a very specific way. So the challenge is the authorities, because there are various sectors in the city that run the beach, that run the coast, that manage the parks, and getting them all aligned to be thinking more entrepreneurially as to how we safely and in a dignified manner monetize our beaches, which creates jobs for the local folk in those communities. And that's going to be a big drive for Blue Cape up in the coming year.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Bruce. I was actually going to ask about the partnerships and the other external stakeholders involved, but then you mentioned the authorities. Are there any other external stakeholders that you think should be part of these projects?
The stakeholders are all there. They're in this room right now, and there are many, many more. It does take larger entities to drive the process, I think, and it's quite sad in some respects where some facilities have been demolished, city-owned facilities, just because they don't have the funds to maintain some of them in some areas. So it's this disconnect that is out there, and we're trying to establish a better connection between all the nonprofits and organizations that are doing good, that could utilize city-owned properties where they can't maintain them or don't have the funds to maintain them. And this could be achieved at zero cost to the city or the province or the local municipalities or sandparks. A little bit like has happened, again, in Hout Bay, in that corner, public works land. There's a lease in place, and it's a beautiful setting right now. And that could be replicated certainly in the Cape, but nationwide. There's absolutely no reason why we can't have these economic hubs in many, many more places. And it's really connecting all the entities together that are involved in the ocean space, because they are all so smart and so clever. They've got so much energy and talent, and we need to utilize that.
Okay. I see a hand there. Yes, Margaret.
Yes, I just want to add on to what Bruce has said there. I think the reason why, so just to add a bit of context, the space that we're using in Hout Bay was a derelict site. There was a broken down container there, glass, plastic lying around all over the place. When we started, I guess you can use the word gentrifying it, planting plants, picking up the plastic, painting the container. Now we've got a few containers there, and we have a double story structure where we. But I think the reason why people have enjoyed coming to our space, supporting our coffee shop is it's not just another restaurant on the beach. We are supporting the local communities through what we're doing there. We have our ocean school, we have our ocean therapy program, we have our Learn to Swim program. We run beach cleanups on a regular basis, high impact coastal cleanups. We run educational sessions where we teach the members of the public about plastic pollution, overfishing, whatever topics are with regards to the ocean. I see Zandile has joined us. She's one of our amazing guest speakers at the program from the Black Mermaid Foundation. So, creating these types of spaces where people can come, it's beautiful, they can enjoy the beach, but it's also getting the community involved. We're creating jobs for them, and it's not like it's not like a handout. They're helping us build this space, and by getting the kids to come through our programs, we're providing that access for them, which they didn't have in the past. They can't learn how to swim and get into life saving, get into surfing, kite surfing, any of these things, if they don't have a swimming costume, if they don't have safe transport to the beach, and if they don't understand how the ocean and the currents work, then that blocks a massive segment of our population from actually entering this ocean tourism, ocean sports industry. So that's the main goal that we're trying to do, is to provide this access to them in very practical ways that people might not always think of. Like, for example, girls don't want to get in the water because they don't want to make their braids wet. So how can we help? That's an important thing to take into consideration. And then not only giving them the physical skills, but really getting them invested in, why do we want to help and protect the ocean? Why is the ocean important to us? And it's not just platitudes, it's not just saying the ocean is important because, we have to keep it clean. Why do we have to keep it clean? Why is it important to us? To really, really get them to start loving the ocean. And the only way that they can do that is to enjoy it, and to see that the ocean is a space where they can find joy, love, peace, calm, excitement, So an interesting model, but just another point on that is we have been in communications with the City of Cape Town on a number of occasions regarding the water quality on Hout Bay Beach. And that is, when you talk to people, that is the main reason why they don't come to Hout Bay Beach. It's a beautiful, incredibly beautiful beach. It's a perfect place to stop on the way to Cape Point. There's massive amounts of parking. The ocean is safe for most of the time. It's not like Llandudno with huge waves because it's in a bay. It's a really easy place for people to come and swim and enjoy. But the water quality is a big problem. And I don't really see what's being done about this. This is the Dyzo River that flows into Hout Bay. And if this comes back to service delivery in the Imizamo Yethu community, and really thinking of a solution to what can we do about this, because the water quality is a problem and it's keeping people away from the beach where it could be utilized in such an amazing way.
Thank you so much for that insight there. I actually quite understand what you're talking about when you're talking about girls not wanting to get their braids wet. I would also throw a fit. But Vince, I see your hand is up as well.
Sure, thanks very much. I think just to jump on there, while we're talking about water quality, it was a point I was going to raise anyway. But I think it's so critical. We're going to start talking about, increasing usage of beach areas and recreation around coastal areas. But I can tell you now, Blue Flag, which is a certification for public beach sites, one of the major components that we do monitor at these sites is water quality. And it is not a Hout Bay crisis or a Cape Town crisis, actually a South African crisis. The impact of freshwater systems and rivers on the ocean health for bathers and users is actually a national emergency. So we currently have about 200 swimming beaches in South Africa. Every given year we have about 50 of those which are Blue Flag sites, but those rotate. So those are sites which are intensely monitored for water quality. So you're best off swimming at a site that has a Blue Flag flying. The worst case is they couldn't achieve Blue Flag, or possibly even worse is we don't even know what the situation is at those beaches. So I would just like to highlight the issue of water quality. If we're talking about increasing these spaces for people to use, if we don't deal with this issue of water quality, and it's a bit of a silent pressure. You can't see it. It's not something that impacts the view or the aesthetic of the beach, but it's something that certainly will impact the user in a way. But we cannot talk too much about how to further develop this product unless we deal with this issue, because it is growing. It is getting worse by the year, and we'll start seeing major metros being hit this next coming Blue Flag season, where beaches are falling off of the Blue Flag program simply because they cannot qualify. The water quality is dwindling. So I think it's a point worth mentioning, or worth bringing up if we're going to start talking about solutions and things we can do to make a difference. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Vince. Kate, what do you think?
Well, firstly, it was nice to hear what Marguerite was saying, because despite being a Cape Townian, I'm ashamed to say I didn't know enough about what you were doing there. So I will be bringing my family and coming to visit you. And sounds amazing. And I think that local action like that is deliberate and works, it's a place-making kind of initiative that creates opportunities, is probably the most powerful way to get anything done. But I was going to also make some comments about cross-sectoral opportunities and barriers, and I think the water quality one is a real issue. I was also interested to hear what Bruce said about the work that they're doing with the yacht building and other opportunities there. And I think that sort of at a strategic economic level, if we can make the case clearly for how you link things like manufacturing to ocean tourism, you can build a bigger argument, an economic business case, which is always quite powerful, much like you can with the water as well. I think showing the linkages through to the users rather than where it often stops, which is with sort of the academic research. So people who are interested in that will know about that. I actually was reading an article, there's a scientific article that was published yesterday on the water quality in South Africa because of the discharge. But I also wanted to make a couple of other points, which are quite different, sort of more like high level conceptual things. I mean, one of the things that occurred to me in thinking about the session is that when we talk about nature-based tourism, or when people talk about nature-based tourism, they often think about safari tourism. If we're talking about Africa more generally, or sometimes beach tourism. And it strikes me that conceptually, in terms of how we market and understand the ocean tourism sector, there's a lot of work to be done. I don't think, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't even think amongst us here we would be able to articulate exactly what we mean. We're talking about coastal, when we're talking about ocean, what activities do we include? And then also, are there certain activities we simply don't believe are sustainable? but I'm being provocative on purpose. But, cruise tourism has come, and certain kinds of cruise tourism, big cruise tourism, has come under enormous criticism. You remember with COVID what happened on ships, but just generally because of the environmental discharges, and often the economic impacts are quite localized. So it might be, where a cruise liner moors itself, that the passengers will be kept in that vicinity, but typically the economic impacts of cruise tourism are quite limited. It's interesting to have Pauline on the line, because I know that obviously the V&A and Cape Town are pushing for cruise liner tourism. I don't have a problem with that strategically. I just think that there are important questions that we need to get ahead of, because there's a lot of bad publicity around cruise tourism. So again, strategically, are there certain activities we don't do, or if we do everything, are there certain principles that guide everything we do? And of course, there is a lot of work that's been done around sustainable tourism in general. But I think that would be important. And then I wanted to just make another point, also completely different from what's been said, but might be of interest, linking coastal tourism to climate change in Africa, on the continent, not so much in South Africa, but there's some recent research that shows that many World Heritage sites that are on the coast in different countries around Africa, I mean, over 100 of them, are at risk from climate change impacts in the next 20 years. And if one wants to sort of locate one's thinking, I think that might be an interesting lens as well, because these are globally important heritage sites. Some are cultural, some are natural. They can be a major iconic destinations for tourism when one's talking about developing tourism. And yet, of course, they're particularly at risk from climate change. So maybe an interesting lens if one was to start thinking it one way into developing sustainable coastal tourism, maybe looking at some of the World Heritage sites and the kinds of things that need to be done and how that links to local economic development could be quite interesting. And then I do think that, it seems very South African focused, this discussion, and maybe that's just the way these things are quite often, that we do have amazing examples of innovation already. So we're hearing about the Hart Bay example, but if you think about Abelobi with the fishermen in Hermanus, and the kind of various digitalization stuff there, and how it links through to restaurants, high-end restaurants where tourists can see that the fish was caught by a certain local fisherman, some really nice cross-sectoral innovations. I was thinking about Wolfgat, which is that restaurant in Paternoster that won best restaurant in the world a few years ago. It's still in the top 50. So really interesting, linked to a heritage site on the coast where you're foraging local flora, developing local seafood. So I actually think, as is often the case in South Africa, there are amazing things being done that deserve a lot more recognition, but also deserve to be sort of linked together practically and sort of conceptually from a branding perspective and marketing perspective. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Kate. I think that is a really thought-provoking conversation that you started there. And I had highlighted actually and underlined twice sustainability on my notebook here. Okay, and I think it's quite good that perhaps Vincent should go next and maybe talk to us a little bit more about sustainable tourism in this perspective as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess the major point that I've made around water quality, but yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that it's always worth keeping an eye on what our sustainable goals are, and being very aware of those from the onset of talking about how we can grow things and expand things, and yeah, there's a lot out there at the moment about how this can be done, and there's a lot of work on over-tourism, and there's a lot of work on sustainable tourism and various metrics. But I think it's important for the users, if that's us, or the stakeholders, if that's us, to ask that question that Kate just said, is what is it that we want to get out of this, and what is it that we see as good growth versus dangerous growth. Just to be clear on that, I think when it comes to the coastal space, it does get pretty grey, because even, as we've already spoken about, it's very difficult to define the different parts of the coast. When we talk about coastal, we talk about the beach, we talk about offshore, onshore marine. I think there's a lot of grey around just defining that tourism space in a very basic form. So it becomes even harder then to manage it, because you're often not sure who's in control of those areas. So there's a lot of basic questions that still need to be answered about the coastal space, how it's meant to be used, who's responsible for it, what is your role as a government agency, a non-profit, a commercial tourism venture. There's still quite a bit of work to be done, but yeah, I think it is important to start asking as a country, or even as a region, what do we see as acceptable, and what are the things we want to avoid. There's lots of great examples from around the world where things have worked and perhaps things have gone too far. We're lucky enough as a Blue Flag operator to share regularly with 50 countries, coastal countries around the world. We're all running exactly the same program in our countries, and I've been to a number of these countries and seen where things have, what seemed like a great growth option for the country, have backfired and actually are now starting to harm the tourism product. So yeah, I think it's worth discussing those sort of barriers or those limits, and trying to define them a bit better as a group, before we just head out and grow for the sake of growing. Yeah, I obviously sound like the environmentalist in the panel, but I think it's worth mentioning from a growth perspective. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I absolutely agree with you. I think defining and setting parameters could be very, very important in terms of then coming up with sustainable ideas and directions on how to approach tourism in this aspect. But Kate also raised a very interesting point there about branding. How then do you think it would, what do you think it would mean to branding this types of areas, this type of ocean tourism? Vincent, what do you think it would mean? If we then set parameters and identify specifically, what do you think it would mean to the branding aspect?
Can you just elaborate a bit more on that, on the question?
When Kate was speaking, she said that we need to be able to brand coastal tourism for the area or for the country. So what I'm saying is, since you mentioned that we need to be able to define these coastal spaces and activities, once they have been defined, what do you think that would mean to the branding of those territories, of those tourism spaces?
Sure. I mean, I think we need to be, there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be brought forward about our coastal areas before we start planning anything. So for instance, we looked at the map of Blue Flag beaches around the country, and these are highly developed urban bathing areas with facilities and amenities, toilets, ablutions, lifesavers, security. And obviously the intention there is to get as many of these beaches certified as possible. But then you see certain portions of the coast, like the Wild Coast, northern KZN, the West Coast. These are not popular swimming areas. This is a more rural, a wilderness product. It's a place that we don't want to see developed. We don't want to see, large buildings and heavy infrastructure and parking lots being developed there. So instead of fighting that urge to do that, how do we best implement tourist products that fit the area, that fit the coastline? I mean, the Wild Coast is a wonderful example of an area that needs to be celebrated for what it is, and products need to be developed that complement the area in a way that's going to protect it. So we've got to be very clear when it comes to branding these things. We've got to diversify that product in a way that speaks to what the natural setting is asking for. The Wild Coast is a good example. The West Coast is a good example. Maputoland up in northern KZN is a good example. I think we've got to be clear on that, and we've got to brand appropriately for that. If we're talking about cruise liners coming in, we've got to know exactly where we want these people to go and what we want them to do and what we want them to not do. I think that's got to be pretty clear. And at the moment, I think there's a lot of work being done regionally. So every province has got their own ideas for how they should roll out, but perhaps nationally, we need to speak more openly about protecting things like the Wild Coast product for what it is. These homestays, these low impact hiking products, getting community-based operators more involved in the tourism product. We've got to look at that as not a sort of second option to developing another Camps Bay or Margate Beach. This has got to be the priority for these areas because it's the best thing to do for those areas. So branding needs to be clever. It needs to be fit for purpose. I think that it's important that we brand according to what the coast is asking us to brand rather than us defining that.
Right, thank you so much. I think that's very interesting. Actually, that reminds me of a workshop that I attended a couple of months ago from West Scotland, and they were talking about branding, as you have said, for the space. So rather than trying to make the space more attractive, you use exactly what is already there to brand the space. So if it's a rural area, then that's how you brand it, as a rural area. If it's a scenic area, then you brand it as that. So I like that. Thank you so much for that, Vincent. I see there's a hand up. Yes, Pauline?
Yes, I just want to come in there, and I know it's very governmental to listen to, but at the moment we're busy with our district plans or the planning department, and the coastal area is part of that. And it's now that for people to come forward to say what they want for that area. So what the city has done is they've identified nodes, because you don't want continuous development. But what all I wanted to say is that we want the public and NGOs and people to come forward with ideas how to develop the area and which areas just to leave. And from a tourism point of view, we need diversity. We need areas that has got no development, because that has got appeal for people, and areas that are highly development, like Sea Point, where it's got a specific purpose. Yeah, so my appeal is just that people, when they do see city coming out with boring plans, that they do look at that and identify areas and what kind of activities they would see on those coastal areas.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in there. Thanks, Talent. Just one person who's joined us late is Zandile. Zandile, if you can just do a quick intro on yourself, and then just see how you can, you are doing a lot on sort of coastal tourism at the moment, with your diving training and stuff, and also bringing in opportunities for sort of social development as well. So very interested to bring that narrative into it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that, Rex. Hi, everyone. My name is Zandile Ndlovu. I'm a freediving instructor, and I'm also the founder of the Black Mermaid Foundation, which is an organization that's working to create diverse representation in ocean spaces. And I've done beautiful work with Marguerite at the Sentinel Ocean School. And, as Marguerite was speaking, I just thought, this is exactly it. The whole idea says, what does it mean to bring the community in and co-create with the community, kind of like restoration, benefit to the community, and then co-creating solutions to bring the change that we want to see in the world. And so when I think of like tourism, freediving in Cape Town has been the most incredible thing. And even when I started diving, some Cape Townians couldn't believe that that was Cape Town. And so it's so beautiful to actually start creating an economy that is in, you know, where we are at. And then there's the people who then come from outside. And so from the perspective of teaching and showcasing our oceans, that has opened up new opportunities for me, but it also just kind of has expanded the world and how we see the ocean and the fear of the very cold water. So I feel like I'm loving this entire discussion, and I've just like made little notes as everyone was speaking. Sorry I was late. I'm having a bit of a wild day. But I loved what Vincent was also speaking about, like the water situation, right? So we want to create all of these incredible solutions, but the water situation matters. So amen to that. And what does it mean to brand for the space? Seeing the beauty of what is already there and amplifying it. And I think that is so powerful because it speaks of a preservation of a people, a preservation of a community, a preservation and amplification of what already is. And that's just so powerful. And Kate, asking hard questions. I love that. How much of what we do is sustainable? You know, when we look at, so I scuba dive as well. And I ask the question all the time. I say, what does this mean for our oceans and the greater run, right? And it's not necessarily the bubbles that are in my tank, but every single time I go off on a boat and when I'm in the water and I can taste the petrol in my mouth, right? So it's the continuous space that says, okay, how do we know that this is beautiful. We know that we want to expand it. We know we want to make it accessible, but how do we do it in a way that is most sustainable? And allows the generations to come to actually be able to inherit the beauty that our oceans are as well. So we want to grow the space, but how do we do it beautifully? I was part of a discussion talking the SADC region. They were talking about transfrontier conservation areas. So, and it was interesting because when Zanzibar came on board to speak on their beautiful land, the gentleman actually said, if you guys remember, Tanzania didn't close in the midst of COVID. And so the world came to us, but we didn't realize how finite we are. We depend on tourism, but to see the damage of the time means that I might not be able to place down, you know, actual and contingent plans of what we're going to do moving forward, because we are all of a sudden being faced with the reality that the world loves to come here, but what does it mean to protect the space? And if we don't protect it, there'll be nothing to share and celebrate. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sandile. That's a very nice introduction and also some very good points made there. Okay, so there is still a hand up. Leonie, if you could maybe give us your addition, and straight after, Lushka, if you would like to give us your observations as well.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to address with what Zandile and Vince were saying. You know, the catch-22 is that we need tourism, or we are of the opinion that is, you know, like that there's obviously a lot of jobs and a lot of money depends on tourism, and it and same, you know, what we were saying earlier with the cruise liners, you know, they bring lots of people to Cape Town, but what does this mean for our environment? What does it mean also for the accessibility for our locals to still enjoy places when everything is filled with mass tourism? And that's where I think we just need to be very, and I see it with my own, you know, the hotel I run, we are receiving big group inquiries, and technically, you know, there is no one governing what we are doing. Everything that we are doing at our hotel to protect the ocean or to protect the environment and to remind our guests to be mindful, we do out of our own incentive. And I think the pressure needs to come here more from the government, more from also Cape Town Tourism, to make sure that we educate guests, but also that we put hotels and DMCs, like all those stakeholders who are having an invested interest into tourism, under some governance on how are they making sure that they do their part to make it sustainable. And if we don't do that, you know, we still will see that everybody can do whatever they want. And I can tell you out of my own experience, being sustainable is much more expensive. It hits you in the profit line. So if I have if I'm my own business, and no one tells me that I have to do it, I probably won't until I really, I'm told to. And I think we just need to be very mindful of that the pressure needs to come from the government. It needs to come from Cape Town Tourism, and it needs to be not something nice to have. It needs to be something, if you want to operate, you need to operate within a certain green standard. And I always encourage anyone, again, Zandila, I just thought how many guests I have who drive all the way out to Gansbaai to go shark cage diving and do all of this. And I actually say to them, why don't you, rather do an ocean walk or, stay local and don't drive all the way out there for just one day. There's so many more activities, but it's all about educating guests and telling them what we can do and inviting them to local projects and to be part of it, because the interest for many groups and also corporate companies is there. We just sometimes miss to communicate it at the right spaces to the right people, in my opinion.
Right, thank you so much for that. I see there's another hand. I was going to go straight to Alushka, but Pauline, perhaps you might have something to say.
Yeah, it was just interesting. We had a responsible tourism campaign for 5 years that we ran through with Cape Town Tourism and the City of Cape Town. And it was very difficult to change people's attitudes. But then happened the water situation. And because water became expensive, people suddenly changed the way that they do business. So we're always talking about making it more expensive, and people will learn on that side. But on the other hand, we don't want to force people through those kind of means to change the way that they do their business. So it's a very tricky way to walk to make people change their way. So on the one side is educational awareness, and the other side is your sticks that you use. And it's a very fine line that you have to walk to grow a business. Yeah.
Thanks, Talent. I'll jump in here. Pauline took the words right out of my mouth. I was actually going to refer to the water saving campaign that the city did, specifically from the tourist point of view. And Pauline, our interpretation from the tourism side of things was actually a positive one. With the campaigns that rolled out, we actually found that tourists were willing to work with us when they saw the bigger picture and when they understood what they were working towards. So I think that does touch on the marketing aspect, the education aspect, and really making tourists understand. We say, come, be mindful, do the ocean walk, but do they understand why they are doing that? And that is something we as tourist guides, when we tell those stories, when we really drive the activities and the experiences that tourists need to have, we need them to understand why we are saying do these specific things instead of not say this. But it's a double-edged sword. We want the cruise tourism, we need those feet in the city as well, but it's then working with those cruise ship operators, which is a whole nother world of pain, but getting them to understand that the activities they promote and the way they spend that half day in the city needs to change, and work with us on that to prevent the traffic, the over-tourism, and to give different opportunities to those guests as well. So again, an educational aspect. And then also not reinventing the wheel. I think we sometimes, as South Africans, we always feel, we're over-legislated, we're over-regulated, but those are actually positive things. There are so many cities in the world which don't have those things in place. So we need to work with that we have in place and actually tell the tourists, tell the customer, tell the public, we have these in place, and these actually will speak to their peace of mind. So legislation exists, adventure tourism has guidelines, and this speaks to the safety concerns of the public. If your operator you're using for your activity is working towards these guidelines, it really does help that fear factor when it comes to the public using these experiences as well. So I really think that those things that exist, we need to work with them in a positive manner, and shout that we have these in place, because as I said, there are so many places which don't have these in place. And now that we're telling people, be more mindful, work with us, when they understand everything behind what is already in place, they will also more likely understand why we need them to do the things we're asking from them. So I really think, we don't have to reinvent the wheel on some fronts, and working with these things in place, putting this peace of mind in potential users' mindset is quite important as well.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Alushka. Quite enlightening perspective there. Okay, Marguerite, what do you think?
Sorry about that. I was just chatting away with my microphone on mute.
No problem.
I was especially interested to hear about Leonie and what the Radisson is doing. Early on, Leonie, you mentioned that the Radisson has gone 80% plastic free. Is that correct? Did I have that correct?
Yes, I mean my hotel, not Radisson in total, but we as Radisson Red, yes.
Okay. No, I find that amazing because one of our core partners and donor organizations is an organization based in the US called Parlay for the Oceans. And they're a global NGO working across the world really to create awareness around plastic pollution, and working with hotels, with events, with not only NGOs, but with governments, with creators, with brands to try and help them reduce their plastic footprint. And I think from talking to them and from listening to them, it seems like the consumer is also, the consumer is changing, and what they're expecting from, the places where they come and visit. We're obviously talking probably the more high-end consumer here, but this is becoming an expectation if they're going to be coming to an event, if they're going to be staying at a hotel, if you have your little single-use plastic shampoo bottles, or if you have everything, your soap wrapped in plastic, all of that. I mean, if I ever see that, it really bothers me. So I think it is important for tourism in Cape Town to really come to the party and to understand that the consumer mindset is changing, and that the way that we do things also needs to change. We recently had an event in Jeffreys Bay. It was the World Surf League surf contest, where I don't know if any of you are aware of it, but this is the big surf contest that travels around the world. And the event in Jeffreys Bay was huge, and it was a really big success. I mean, I think on the final day there were 15,000 spectators on the beach watching the event. And this the event was very consciously a low. Well, obviously it's impossible to avoid plastic 100%, but wherever they could, there was no plastic. Everything was, either in paper bags or biodegradable or reused plastic products, and it not only looked beautiful, it's something that the message really came across, and it was a big part of the messaging in the event. And I think it just adds an extra layer to the experience of going to the event and creating this awareness. So yeah, I just think it is something that's becoming more necessary nowadays. It can't just be ignored anymore. But like Leonie and Zandile also mentioned, that doing this type of work also requires privilege. So it's a bit of a juggling act. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Zandile, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Talent. I just wanted to affirm like what Marguerite was saying, because I've been saying, how do we message conservation and how do we ensure that we're speaking to how people listen? So when you look at the J-Bay event, and I say this respectfully, but it is to make it cool, but speaking into the nuance of the space. So like when you look in the surf industry and when you look at what Parlay is doing, Corona is doing, they are messaging through what people are passionate about. And so the way in which we communicate needs to be nuanced to who we're talking to. And I think that brings incredible change. yeah, that I just wanted to just say high five. Damn, why am I like this?
Thank you so much for that, Sandile. Actually, I was also quite riveted by that because it's some of the fundamental aspects of social marketing to kind of address where people are coming from, to kind of address what people care about and use that. But I was curious about the messages that leaves within the community in that space, because that is the event bringing about sustainable lack of, what am I going to say? Sustainable practices for the environment where it's hosted. But what messages does that make or leave for the community when the event is gone? Is that sustainable? Does the community follow through with that? Was there a strong enough impact from that event's message?
I think
that's kind of the question that I'm left with.
I think that's a really important question, Talent. And I think I can just give Jeffreys Bay as an example, because we've just been, we've been working there and we were working with them on this event. I think the follow through there is the World Surf League who's put on this event. So there's this big event that they put on, but they also are sponsoring a program that we're running in Jeffreys Bay, which is a surf therapy and ocean education program. And through this program, the kids who are the beneficiaries of the program are from the local communities, and the coaches who are working directly with the kids are from these same communities as well. And they are all, getting training, and so the messages that they're giving back to the kids is, so it's a surf therapy, mental health, life skills program, but an important core component of this program is ocean education, how to live sustainably, why this is important to them specifically, because these kids have grown up walking on the rocks and, picking up the octopuses and killing them. So, and that's fine, because that's how they've grown up. This is part of their culture. And we're not telling them not to do that. What we're doing is we're showing them the beautiful side of the octopus. So we're not forcing anything on them, but sorry, I'm digressing. What I'm saying is that the World Surf League, for example, they're sponsoring this program. So they're doing more than just putting on an event and having a sustainable event. They are actually, helping us reach more of the local community through this specific program as well, which is, doing more than just putting on a sustainable event. There is the educational side of that going on. And next year, we're hoping to do more in terms of more ocean education talks, more, we want to do a proper beach cleanup. And, from our side, we run lots and lots of beach cleanups. And we really see them as an awareness raising tool, because if we're just going to keep on doing beach cleanups, we're going to keep doing cleanups for the next thousands of years. It's not going to stop the problem. But it is an awareness creating tool. If you're on the beach and you're picking up chip packets and you're picking up earbuds and you're picking up, toothbrushes, then you can see your direct consumer choices are ending up in our oceans. And then we use it as an educational tool while we also are doing the actual educating with the kids on a daily basis. So I don't know. I hope I answered your question. I think I went a little bit roundabout way there. Sorry.
Could I jump in, please?
Yes, Sandile, go ahead.
Talent, sorry, I was going to say, I love the question that you're asking, because you're saying, how are the actual stakeholders participating and being engaged post the event, right? And I feel like that is an important question. Even now when we're having these discussions, in the foundation, we're looking to expand. And so the whole idea says, what does it mean to have these snorkel kits across the coast of South Africa, where you empower the community enough that they are able to start making money for themselves through snorkeling excursions for people that come and visit, let's say in Cinsa or in Coffee Bay or whatever. But what Marguerite is also saying, which I think is important, is when you look at these kids, they are able to see the benefit of the work that is being done by Sentinel Ocean. The parents are able to see the benefit that comes from their kids' participation in, and they become stakeholders based on that. And so I'm always asking the question, how do we increase stakeholder engagement and participation, especially in these communities where we're not coming in, helicoptering in and saying ours is the way, but what does it mean to actually come in, co-create and be equal partners in how you create that change and benefit into the community is always the most incredible currency for change. And so when we speak tourism, the question to me always says, what does it mean to empower the community enough where they are equal stakeholders, where they are in this room, speaking of how conservation has changed their communities versus how we sometimes work. And of course, it is the heart that places us where we end up working. But what does it mean where these communities become their own voice? Do you know what I mean? So that we're not always like a in-between space, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much for that. I think it makes a lot of sense. But maybe Amanda could enlighten us a little bit more about how this all fits into like sports sustainability.
I think all of it fits very much into sports sustainability. You know, firstly, obviously, you know, the hype around coming into a host city, that messaging needs to go out long before anyone arrives in South Africa. And obviously, I'm talking specifically the Ocean Race. The Ocean Race has a year-long project, you know, that they actually work through all the host cities. To actually make sure that, you know, the sustainability element is key and at the forefront of everybody's minds. And that goes into, you know, obviously the suppliers that you bring in, very similar to, you know, J-Bay, they would have done the same, looked at their suppliers, made sure that, you know, they were looking at not only sort of the use of single-use plastics, but the water consumption. How is the water utilized, grey water, you know, refilling of water bottles. You know, those kind of things are so key and so important in any event, pre-event, during, and obviously, you know, the stats that get gathered so that, you know, you can actually better an event, you know, the following year. Things like branding, you know, it's such a huge element of an event that, you know, how do you find a solution to, you know, branding? You know, you've got your sponsors that obviously want their visibility, and you know, to actually be able to give them that sort of visibility, but do it in a sustainable way. And the messaging that you know, that gets created around that is so key and so important. And by involving, I think, you know, initiatives like Marguerite's, where you can actually show people how it's done, what their alternatives are. You know, those are very, very important projects. So yeah, that's sort of a little bit, you know, on the Ocean Race side of things, on the sustainability side.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I think you bring about some very, very important points there, particularly with partnerships and how they work and visibility and so on. But how about raising awareness for the venue itself? For example, with the Ocean Race, when it makes its stop in Cape Town, how then can the audience or the participants be made aware of the things that happen within that station? For example, the boat building, is there some kind of leveraging that happens around that? And who's responsible? Which stakeholders are then responsible for kind of building that kind of awareness around those spaces? Perhaps, Bruce, you might have an opinion?
Thank you. Yes, I do. I just quickly wanted to mention something that Kate brought up about the quickly cruise ship tourism. We know it's very localized, and I do know what the V&A did, went to great lengths to achieve when they set up the cruise ship terminal, was to enlarge the supplier database of the companies that are doing business with the cruise ships. That was always kind of a old boys network, quite a closed shop. So they expanded that dramatically. And at Blue Cape, we are doing that with the super yachting. We don't want the same companies to do business with the super yachts. You know, as Vanessa and I say, when the lovely ladies in Adley Street selling flowers are selling their flowers to the super yachts, then we know we've done a good job spreading the network. Leonie, you mentioned the green and sustainability, and quite right, the point was raised that in boat building, it's the clients that are insisting on understanding how their boats are built, with what materials, the air quality in the factory, the conditions for workers. That's now coming from the clients. So the clients are leading the way long before legislation kicks in, that's for sure. Going back to your question, yes, in the boat building sector, we have engaged with the Ocean Race over the many years that these events come to Cape Town, in promoting ourselves to all the companies, the sponsors, the captains, the crews, and vice versa. We try and have masterclasses from these experts that arrive in our country and get them to spread some of their knowledge to our local sailors, mast builders, sail makers, and boat builders. So there's always this exchange of knowledge and ideas, because we definitely want legacy from these events that come here, to encourage and give that knowledge to our local builders and marine manufacturers. And I hope that has answered a bit of it.
Yes, thank you so much. That does answer a large bulk of the question. I see that Lindani has just joined us. Perhaps we could give him a minute to introduce himself to us. Hi, Lindani.
Hi, Talent. How are you? Let me
all right, thank you.
Let me just put on my video. Let me just put on my video so everyone can see who Lindani is. Hi, everyone. How are you? I see some familiar faces, I think, from last time as well. So good to meet all of you. And today I come. I think the last time we had this engagement, I was wearing a hat of an NPO and working with underprivileged kids through the Royal Cape Yacht Club, through sailing and so forth. So today I wear a different hat, and I work for the VNA. So and I'm in the marine space here at the VNA. So that's how I'm coming into the fray. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Lindani. It's very nice to meet you. Could you maybe give us your own perspectives as well on the discussion that we have just been having? Bruce was just indicating to us how they get involved with events and how they expose what they do as a company to the participants of the events, and how that adds on to the tourism aspect. What part does the VNA play in ocean sports?
So Talent, I think from my perspective, you know, where I am now sitting in this hat, and mind you, I've recently just been here for 4 months. So I think I'd speak to the opportunities rather that I've seen that are possible in our space and what we can do. For instance, you know, we've got quite a lot of water space here in the VNA, and one of the things that we excluding Battery Park, if people know Battery Park, where there's stand-up paddleboarding and water polo stuff that's going on there. I look after an area which also has quite a large amount of water space. And in doing my walkabouts, you know, around the VNA, I do realize that there's a lot of kind of opportunity in terms of the canals that we have. There's lots of opportunity in terms of the key areas. Like, I don't know how well people know the V&A, but if you just look at the area in front of the Table Bay Hotel by Key 6, if you look at that area, and also Granger Bay, if people know that, where the water sport, the sports club is there, and the guys and the slipway. So if you look at those two areas, just those two areas on their own, there's a substantial amount of water space there, and it's almost like dead space. As the V&A, we look at the space from a commercial point of view, and getting boats involved and all of that. But then you have events like the Volvo coming, so where we're facilitators of ocean sports and tourism, but in the dead time where there is no Volvo and there's nothing happening, we still have water space, and we still have people coming to Cape Town, especially during the peak season, December and all of that. And their interaction with the water is very minimal at best, you know, so there's opportunity there. A lot of things could be done on that water space with just the general public that are here, and with eventing as well. So I think there's a role for the V&A to play, to be a facilitator in a space where you have such a confluence of different companies, just from our tenants alone, getting involved in community outreach and bringing kids out here and getting them active in our water space. Maybe the V&A doesn't have to be the one that executes, but definitely as a precinct, as a landmark on the continent and globally, I think there's a lot that we could do within our water space.
Thank you so much for that. Well, that's quite an interesting contrast to the discussion we had previously about the Hout Bay area and the activities and initiatives going on there. So that's very, very interesting. Marguerite, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to quickly add to that. Lindani, you mentioned the battery park space. And I just wanted to add to, I think that is an incredibly amazing use of space. What's happened there? You know, you've got the sailing therapy program there as well. The Little Optimist program, where they get underprivileged kids to come and teach them how to use those little, I can't remember the name, what they use for those little boats. And then they also take them to the aquarium after their visit. And you know, I think if more organizations like that could have more support, then you're really bringing the community down to the waterfront, and you're using that space year round. You know, it's not only a summer month thing, and it's job creation. And I know they've had those swimming races as well in the canals, and through that, you need to employ lifeguards, and you know, you're doing job creation with that as well. So that the canals of the waterfront, and especially around that battery park section, I think has got an incredible opportunity for growth.
Thank you so much for that addition there, Margaret. Okay, so we have a few minutes left before Rex stops us. And Kate has given us quite a few interesting questions here. Maybe Rex, you want to say something before I ask those questions?
Yeah, so I wanted to just actually answer one of Kate's questions. So I'm very big into trying to get events to collaborate. So I was quite keen, and we did get in contact, and we are doing a cooperation with the Ocean Race, Cape Town Stopover, which is exciting. So these kind of opportunities are definitely there. And we will be running Ocean Innovation Africa during the Ocean Race in February next year. And I think that's kind of key to making sure that the right people, that we're mixing both industry as well as consumers and public. What we see, and it's in lots of events though, but in this specifically, is that we need to educate the local public that boats are built in South Africa. If you ask general people in South Africa, does South Africa produce any boats? I would say 90% of them would probably have no idea. and would know about that other than educated people that are working in the space. So it's getting them to come through and see and experience and understand what is happening out here, because they will spread the word. You know, they will say to someone that comes out from overseas, hey, did you know you can actually buy a boat in South Africa, and it's made here. And that kind of stuff is key for us, and that's just one example. The example grows as well, and the fact that, you know, is anything being done to help sustain our oceans or develop them or clean up places? Yeah, there's awesome stuff happening, and that I've learned about 4 or 5 things already today that I didn't know that were happening as well. So that kind of stuff and bringing people and making them aware is super important in what we're doing. So the real focus is mixing business and showing, getting the right people from overseas out here and seeing what's happening, and from Africa getting them out and seeing what's happening in the market, and then mixing those people with what's happening in general public as well, and showing them that there is that opportunity. So yeah, just to mention on that, we are pushing into that space quite a lot. Kate, do you want to say anything more on that?
Not right now. I've got lots of ideas buzzing around my head. Maybe they'll percolate over our break.
Cool. I mean, is there anyone else who wants to add anything into the conversation here? We've had some great ideas and thoughts, and I think we can start having a think of sort of what we want to target and ideas of what we want to target. I've got a whole lot of points down. But anyone want to add a little bit more in here before we take a little break?
You know what, I am also sorry, I'm now going to take the opportunity because you asked me. So one thing, and we haven't discussed it, and maybe we can't today, but I think it must be on an agenda of sorts, is much more about Pan-Africanism in the space. Because like I said, when I started talking, it's very Cape Town focused and also fairly privileged Cape Town focused, although we're trying to make linkages. But what does it mean for the region and more broadly? And just maybe it's a point to note rather than, you know, it's an expansive point, but I think we mustn't lose sight of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we did recognize that, and you actually have to look at yourself quite critically with things like that. Even with Ocean Innovation, I think we, in our first year, you know, was either French or Cape Town people at our event. And then sort of as we went virtual as well for a while, we were able to expand that. But I think in 2021, we spent, and we managed to get funding from Citi and from South African Tourism and stuff like that to actually bring people from other parts of the world, Europeans, Americans, other parts of the world can afford to come to Cape Town, but often Africans can't get to Cape Town. It's a lot more expensive for someone to fly from Kenya to South Africa than from Europe, just because of per capita income. So, but there is so much going on in Africa and so much needed to be done. So this is pretty exciting, and we are pushing into that. And Africa is huge. It's a massive, massive continent. It's probably, you know, it's got a huge amounts of resources. They are exploited massively, of course, and our oceans around the continent are exploited massively. But that's mainly because they haven't got the rules and the governance like we do in Europe and Americas, and you know, the naval force that's shoos people out of their oceans, unfortunately. But the focus that we've seen just on various industries coming into Africa at the moment is phenomenal. You know, especially with the changing markets around the world. The US are looking into Africa as a place to source and build their relationships. You know, it was left to the East for many years to capitalize on Africa. But Europe and Americas are looking to put a lot more money and get involved and see it as this huge, massive opportunity again after hundreds of years ago and coming here and then leaving for a while. I think they really want to open that up at the moment. So that is exciting, and I think we'll see that come through. But through programs which people are running and finding out about those programs, we do need to bring them into what's happening and give them exposure and opportunity outside of the South African borders. So that is very key. All right, I think we've kind of exhausted everyone's ideas for now. I think everyone needs a coffee and a little break. So let's shoot off. It gives us a little bit longer. I think we'll jump back on here at just before 1 would be great, sort of 5 to 1. Just keep you can either leave and join back on again, or you can just let things running while you shoot off. And we've got to put some points down, and then we will join back for the final roundup afterwards. Thank you, everyone. See you just before 1. Hi, everyone. I'm going to be back in again.
Yep, we're back.
Oh, awesome. A few more minutes to come back on. Awesome. All right, cool. So while we were out, I was writing furiously and pulling points from all the stuff that everyone said. So I've kind of identified 6 different things that were discussed. So I think we can, and then we can maybe see if we've got enough time to go through them. But so the one was sort of beach and ocean spaces and resources, and sort of monetizing them through development. So we'll maybe have a look at that a little bit deeply and try and pull out some ideas and points for that. And then sort of off the back of that as well, which kind of links, is sort of environmental development, keeping our oceans cleaner. So we've got more tourists coming in and meta developments, and you know, ocean sports can carry on in our oceans. Then there was a bit of talk on wildlife and ecotourism, and I might not be getting that right, but getting sort of oceans recognized within the space, and how do we do that? Who do we leverage? So I want to really focus on trying to see who we can include, who we are not thinking about, that's not part of this conversation, that they bring into it, and how we do it. And then fourth, is educating society. We spoke about that. How do we do that? How do we get them to know about our oceans, and that there's a space for them to join in this, and that there is this tourism and sport industries that they should be knowing about. And then there was a lot of talk about, and fifthly, we'll probably look at large-scale tourist operations, so cruise liners, hotels, resorts, etc., and how to make alternative sports and activities known to them and attractive for them to pass on to tourists. And then finally, I'd like to just go over sort of the idea of Pan-Africa as well a little bit more. How do we include them? How do we connect them? What are we missing in this space? And using tourism and sports to get people involved, because I'll elaborate on that as well. So anything else that someone thinks I might have left out that they want discussed? No? Okay, cool. So I'm just going to shove the topic on here. So I was having a look through. So beaching and beaches and ocean resources. I mean, it looks like there's a lot that can be done here. And Marguerite, you gave your insight into what you guys have been doing, and Bruce was mentioning that as well. There's some other comments and ideas that have come through. We talked about, and I know City's here as well, and we talked about, and SAT as well, with Kate as well, doing stuff with them. But other than that, sort of, what other authorities do you think need approaching? I mean, is it Department of Fisheries to get them to release stuff, or is it certain municipalities that are responsible things? How can we get those speaking more? Has anyone got an idea? Marguerite, your hand's up already, so yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I just wanted to get back to the point that Vince mentioned regarding the ocean, the quality of the ocean, the water pollution. I think this is, like he mentioned, it's like the silent problem that's just there and you don't see it, but it's really a crucial problem. And I think as an action point going forward, it's really important that it gets addressed, and you know, what's being done, who is doing anything about this? Are we just giving up? Is there a way to try and solve this problem and to create solutions? Because you know, this impacts all ocean tourism. People are not going to go free diving, surfing, kite surfing, swimming, using our beaches if the water is as polluted as it has been.
That's awesome. I mean, you'll see coming up now. I mean, that was going to be our second point, but I specifically made it that, but maybe it should have been our first point to discuss, because I reckon you have to obviously have clean oceans before you try and get people down to the beach and utilizing resources, because people aren't going to want to be anywhere near the sea if it is polluted. You know, you try to keep away. So yeah, I think on that note, it's sort of, how can we leverage government, or how, without government, how can we just leverage certain private sponsors and donors and people to get involved? And how do you, obviously they'll want something to benefit out of it. So has anyone got any ideas on that sort of structure as well, getting private and government involved in something like this?
I've got 2 comments, Rex. I mean, I think I agree absolutely. The water quality issue is fundamental. And a lot of that is City of Cape Town responsibility. And I think it's hugely complex from a technological point of view in terms of investments in sites and technologies. And I don't know enough about it, but I think a definitive response on what's happening and what the plans are is certainly the starting point. And then maybe when we're talking about leveraging partners for different issues, you know, our long agenda of issues, rather than starting the conversation with how should we approach, you know, this partner or that partner, rather we should identify the actual issues and say who are the right partners, and that's what you take to your partner, or who are the ones who can help us move, because I think you make it relevant to the key stakeholder in each case. I mean, there's a more general awareness raising, obviously comms strategy too, which you guys will no doubt drive around the February conference. But I don't think we should look at partners abstractly. I think we should locate them in the context of the different issues. And that's when we talk to specific partners, in my view.
Amanda, Amanda, do you jump in and then Talent?
Sure. So yeah, just from my side, again, sort of staying on the water quality aspect, I think, you know, and I realize that obviously, you know, there's very definitely City of Cape Town, but it goes so much further than that. You know, are the municipalities within the whole coastline talking to each other? Overberg District, Eden District, you know, and I think an enormous problem is realizing that, you know, the plastics that affect our beaches come from inland. So, you know, that's where the sort of focus needs to be, is what is happening with us managing from a municipal perspective inland, before the plastics even get out, you know, get into those rivers and get out into our oceans. That's where it needs to start. So how to best manage, you know, the dumps through the townships, you know, where sort of areas, you know, low income areas where, you know, they don't necessarily have the ability to sort of put their sort of disposables and rubbish and what have you into even skips. You know, that's all washing down in the rivers and ending up in the ocean. So it's an inland problem that has to be focused on. So I think, you know, that's also a crucial one to be looking at municipalities talking to each other, and what are we looking at in terms of the rivers, managing the river systems before those plastics wash out into the oceans.
Yeah, I totally agree. Talent, do you want to comment on that as well?
Yes, I wanted to add on a little bit to what Kate was saying about identifying specific stakeholders based on the issues. I think it's also quite imperative to be able to identify the objectives of said stakeholders. I think an alignment of objectives is quite important to the success of anything, really, because if the objectives don't align, then it's difficult for them to be invested in the same projects or in the same systems. So I think rather than identifying stakeholders who are willing to give money, like get a return for their investment, rather identify organizations or investors who have the same objective. So if their objective is environmentally inclined, then we can link the objective of the event to that, or the objective of cleaning the beaches or having cleaner water to that organization. And then that works a little bit better because you have the same cause that you're working towards and it benefits everybody involved.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, what is being done? I know a lot of non-profits and projects are going on. Litter Boom is one, and various beach cleanups are there as well. But I know that they are always struggling because getting enough funding to keep things like that going is very tough. But they're providing a service. Is there funding from government for things like this, and how much is proposed to go forward in the future for something like this, where people are putting together amazing projects like this to actually help our oceans? I don't know if Pauline, maybe you can give some advice on what the city's doing on that side, and generally on other questions as well. Where's the city's involvement? Is there a future plan in place from your guys' side? We can't, as I said, can't only just rely on the city, but it's a good place to start. We do need to push on to private as well. But Pauline, are you with us there? And can you maybe give us some insight from your side?
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to talk exactly what the city are doing. We've got a water department, we've got a waste department, and we've got various departments that works along the coast. We have educational unit that consists of one person. So most of our work is dependent on volunteers' responsibility of residents. What do they understand their responsibility? And then also, I think it is in forums like this is for people to articulate exactly what they want government to do. For example, to say that the problem is inland and it's government to sort it out. That's very vague. It needs to say that this area is the origin of the dirt or the pollution, and we need to educate this community because they live along the river and it's their stuff that's landing in the river. So unfortunately, we have to be very localized to work specifically on interventions. Policy-wise, I think we covered. I mean, you can just go onto the website and you can see all the policies about waste and water and what we want to do, and legislation that tells us what to do, and regulations that's in place. And Bruce has been part of the reed fly issue. It's very complicated, but I think collaboration is the most important thing. It's for people to come identify an issue, come together, and then decide how to take it further. We do provide funding through the SPVs or through grant in aid, or through all of those kind of vehicles that we do have. And that's information that we can share, and it's on our website as well, for people to access, to see how can they access funding, or other kind of companies that's working in that area to collaborate. Yeah, but we want to clean up Cape Town. We are passionate about the scenic beauty, the assets that we have. So we definitely for it.
Awesome, thanks, Pauline. I think there's probably quite a, there's always talk about public-private partnerships and stuff going through like this, where the city can help in that space as well. The fact that the city's helping and doing something and putting funding towards it, and people are getting it, and there's more possible push on people saying, yes, the city has given me this funding, I'm going to be using it to clean up this river or educate this community. which can possibly then help us to push like banks or insurance companies or retail companies to say, okay, it's your turn now. The city's doing this. Can you guys do something as well? But it might need a two-pronged approach, because it kind of leaves it at, I know with a lot of the projects, that leaves it in the hands of that person in the project to go and have to ring the bell and approach the retailers. So the small little person saying to the retailers, okay, or to the insurance companies or banks, please help us. But if they go there possibly with someone from the city or in partnership with the city, they might give a lot more money through to it. Marguerite, do you want to add on to that?
Yes, thank you. No, just in terms of that, so I mean, if I look at, for example, the Buckwurfen, it's the spill that gets into the water there often, or the spill that goes in at Sea Point, or any of those places, I don't think that's really community education related. That's infrastructure related. So, you know, we're doing everything we can to educate the local communities in Imizamuyethu, for example, that live on the banks of the Daiza River, with regards to, you know, throwing their plastic in the river. But what do they do about the sewage? You know, that's an infrastructure issue. So, and there's only so much that NGOs and you know, civil society can do about that. And we've tried to engage with the City of Cape Town on this on a number of occasions, along with another NGO called the Friends of the Daiza River. And you know, I know that they've got some nets or similar to Litter Boom, but I think the city have got some nets and things that capture the plastic. But that's not going to do anything about microplastics or the actual pollution. You know, the chemicals and the runoff going into the ocean, and that's the problem. That's what's keeping people out of the water. So, in terms of infrastructure, I mean, I think that is something that the city needs to take the lead on. And I'm so sorry, but I have to go and collect my kids from school. Thank you for having me, everybody.
Thanks, Marguerite. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, it's getting to that time of the day. All right. Yeah, I mean, Pauline, I don't know if you've got anything extra to add there, but I guess it comes down to a resource thing. But again, also communication with a lot of these people and sort of working in partnership with different NGOs. Bruce, are you still with us as well? Do you want to also just put some input into some projects that you've been mentioned on doing?
Hi, Rex. Yeah, no, still here. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's you know, we're sort of monetizing the beach space. Maybe it's a bit crass, but it's sort of, how do we create more jobs on the beach space? I think that's a better way of looking at it. You know, with training, lifeguards, beach stewardship, keeping them safe and secure. And it goes right back to the beginning, which was the point mentioned, was if the beaches are not clean and safe, people won't use them, and with game over. So we've got to get that in place. So assuming we're getting that in place, then we've got to look at the future always. And I look at, you know, countries that have very short summer seasons, a lot of the Mediterranean countries, and they gear up for this. They gear up for a 5-month intense period on a beach where temporary restaurants are set up, temporary snack bars, very cool, very cleverly designed. But in a lot of the municipalities in these regions, they insist that if you get that right, you then have to employ a lifeguard. You have to employ security. There's a lot of the carrot and stick approach. So you then get a safer beach. You get a beach that has more offerings to our tourists and locals, and it creates a little mini version of what's happened in Hout Bay. Maybe for 5 months of the year, there's some beaches that I'm sure for a year round, it would work well. So that's what we're looking at, and who takes the lead. I think an obvious place to start would be the life-saving clubs. They're always in need of funds. They're the experts. They're well run. There are 10, 12 of them around on the main beaches. That should be a good place to start. And it's something we're going to start looking at and engaging with everyone in this room and others to come up with maybe some kind of blueprint that when we approach those that manage and control our beaches, we have a cohesive plan and a cohesive project.
Yeah, that sounds like a great starting point as well, or continuation point, Bruce. I think there's sort of various people in that space as well that need to be chatted to, and you're, within just the life-saving clubs and stuff, you'll probably have people that are from various different corporates around the city as well. There's probably people that are in marketing. There's probably people in media as well. And I think building sort of a framework so that, you know, when something happens, people know about it. When there's a problem, people know about it. So it's building something that can be replicated quite easily between each club to say, okay, here's your group of people. You can actually contact these 20 people because they all have a passion about it and want to help and will jump on and spread the word. So and that will include also government in there as well. So within those life-saving clubs, I'm sure there's people from government that want to help and sort of use their influence as well. Vince, I see you were nodding your head quite a bit as well. Anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the same old drum. I think it is important just to, when we're talking about the water quality issue, to just separate the different kinds of impact on water quality. So we've spoken a lot about plastic, but I think the crisis that I was referring to earlier is more around the wastewater treatment, the E. coli, the streptococci, there's heavy metal there's persistent organic pollutants. There are all these hidden dangers in the water that affect users, and I only have exposure to this because I'm at the end of a lot of the complaints, having run the Blue Flag program. So, you know, you can take a bad weekend of water quality and you can go to the nearby chemist and doctors' rooms and find out how many people have come in with X, Y, and Z. But it's not coordinated. It's you can't call crisis and call it a pandemic and start, you know, checking numbers and comparing numbers. But this is happening this is ongoing around the country all the time. So I think a good place to start, if we're going to actually try and make some sort of moves at fixing this, because at the end of the day, it's the environment that we're trying to promote and sell and develop here. It's a contaminated environment, and it will all come crumbling down if we don't deal with it. But I think the first thing to do would be to say, look, what are these areas where the water is being used, whether it's for sport or whether it's for recreation or tourism, and say, do we know what the impact of poor water quality is on these sites? So for instance, our Blue Flag sites on the East Coast will monitor their water quality throughout the year, which is great. So you can have, the public can have access to water quality data from that beach that they're swimming at throughout the year. They don't have to go through any public requests for data and jump through all these bureaucratic hoops to get information which is technically yours. We give it directly to you. That's the benefit of using a non-profit working between government and the people, is you have the access to the data. But as you move further west, there's a small window, very much like Bruce was mentioning about the Mediterranean. The Western Cape is almost no different. You have a small window of the year where you can use the ocean, and it's that period that they are certified with Blue Flag. So it's only that period that we're monitoring. The truth is that outside of that window, it's pretty awful. The water quality is pretty awful, and we don't know. We just don't know. The public just don't know. So I always say to my friends and family, they'll say, well, you know, geez, prophet of doom, where is it safe to swim? And I'll say, well, you see the Blue Flag flying. It's the only place you can get access to the data. It's the only place where you can be guaranteed that someone's doing independent water quality monitoring. So the point I'm trying to make is, I think there needs to be a big information gathering exercise on all of these intensively used areas. And we need the data to start making decisions, because we can't go back, find money, we can't go back and get action if we don't have the information. So what that is, I don't know, but I think certainly we need more information. And we have models on how to do that, but I don't want it to feel like I'm pushing what we do at this. I mean, there's very many ways to do this, but I think the information is, yeah, I see someone's mentioned the Green Drop report. Exactly. That's there, it's just been done, and this is a perfect document to follow up on And I think it's these sort of forums that need to do it. If we do it, it's going to stop right there until another document is produced about what a crisis we have on our hands. But the question is, what are we going to do?
Yeah, well, I mentioned in the beginning, I'm from Durban. I was up there in June, 3 weeks ago. I've never seen Durban quiet like that. You had the whole beachfront to yourself, and then the waters we were allowed to swim again. And when we got into it, and I came out of the water thinking, oh dear, I might be in trouble. Luckily, nothing happened, but it was, I mean, a huge amount of tourism was lost from that. So it's super important that people are addressing these kind of issues. Kate, on that green drop report, do you want to mention anything on that before we move on to another topic?
No, I mean, that was the article I was referring to, I think, is based on that. So there is recent data. The green drop report wasn't released for many years and it's just been done. And I'm not an expert in this area. But the city of Cape Town does have an obligation around its wastewater and sewage discharge. And we know there are issues. So I do think that in that specific issue, I understand plastics in general are more complicated, but the city does need to say, are there plans? And if so, what are they? And if there aren't plans, then maybe that's some advocacy needs to be developed around that, because it's a huge challenge. I know I went swim at Hart Bay after being told and reading some of that, unfortunately.
Great. So Pauline, I don't want to wind you too much because you're a great supporter and helping us, so we don't want to get too angry at you, but maybe from your advice, other than, like, with the city support, who else can we bring to the party here? Who else other than the city and your different departments? I mean, who do you think else we can include in something like this? It could be a conversation to be taken on.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's all stakeholders. It's province, national, local, private sector, residents specifically, and NGOs and NPOs. And it's everybody. We do have quite a lot of information. I'm sure if we do sit down, we can actually, we have that kind of information, yeah.
But I'm sorry, I'm going to be a pain in the ass. That very specific issue, the city needs to say what its plans are. I mean, I get the fact that they're stakeholders and everything, but that is a municipal responsibility. So Pauline, I know it's not your responsibility, and I used to work in government, so I get the fact that government's often under attack and sometimes it's not fair. But that specific issue around sewage discharge is a City of Cape Town function, and there must be someone in the wastewater department who can say which plan we should look at and who we direct questions to. Rex, I'm being unfair because you're the chair, but I am putting Pauline on the spot because economic development, which is your area, is so affected. It could be, there could be so much more that could be unlocked if we could resolve this. So surely there's an actual individual who's responsible for it.
Yeah, there is an actual individual, and we've got plans in place and policies in place. So I can share that at any time. I'm not just sure whether I send it to Rex or whether we put up a forum to share it with, that the cities respond and share that information, have a webinar, and we highlight these issues, and the city comes back and say what is their role and what are they doing in those specific issues, and we identify all the other role players that also has a role to play. Because the information is out there, it's just how it's communicated, and to sit with that information and delve through it and see what can be done. What are the real issues? Yeah, but we can do that anytime. We do that quite a lot. That people approach us, we sit with them, we take them through our planning, we take them through our issues, we take them through our 5-year plans. We do have that we can do that anytime.
So I think that'll be great. I mean, you can share that with me or with Mario, and then we can get it out to the team. But great to put together some kind of a workshop on that, or a little discussion on that to get key stakeholders to join in. Yeah, another point was raised was educating society on open ocean opportunities. So I'm not sure if anyone's got input into that on, how to get school learners and schools teaching kids about what's going on in the ocean and training them. I know there's a lot of work being done taking schools out and pushing schools to do ocean cleanups and beach cleanups and things like this. But is it something that's almost being put into curriculum, or is it something that is pushed into schools? And then how is that being used? How are we getting media to respond to that with an event, and how events planned around it, and how are we marketing that idea? Kate?
And then I'll need to be quiet after this. Now, look, I think that maybe there's an opportunity around the conference next year. Just what we've been discussing today, we're talking about all the different kind of topologies of ocean tourism and sports and coastal tourism. And then we've already spoken about some of the really exciting major events we host. So the fact that we are the leading kite surfing destination, that we've had the surfing world championships, that we have the different ocean races, and then the innovations around Blue Cape and our boat building sector, and the kind of work that's been done by the Sentinel Ocean Alliance, etc. So I think that it could almost a relatively easy in inverted commas thing to do would be just some cool press releases, maybe with some stats, economic stats, if you want to get it into Business Day or Fin Week and some of the more formal commercial news publications, which are always quite good for decision makers. Just highlighting this, all of it together, I'm sure that your comms team will be looking at that, but I didn't even know about all of the things. And I am a bit on the outside, so that's my ignorance. But I do think there's a nice storyline here that could be worked up leading up to that event. A really nice one. I'd be happy to see if I can find some published research on topologies and stuff as well. If you want to, we can chat about that another time.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, great. Alushka, do you want to add anything on your side about that? And
yeah, thanks, Rex. I think highlighting the existing activities is an important thing, but I think we also need to look at doing that in a more tangible manner. So even doing open days for the public, inviting the public to, open days, come visit this project or this initiative, and spreading that in that way and making people feel, oh, this is not a little isolated project, but I can actually go there and see what's happening, and making it more of a welcoming environment, because I think there's a lot of segmentation and people are not always feeling welcome to go over their borders from Durbanville to Hout Bay or from year to year, because it's outside of their region. So really promoting that in a way that is open and easily accessible, but in, as I say, something a little bit more practical. So maybe the press release leverages an open day or something to that extent. And then also the collaborative thinking, also thinking around using all of those that use the products. So the adventure ground handlers, those who want to make use of the product also need to see the need to start from, let's say, the step one before actually putting their boat out on the ocean, and also understanding what Vince was saying about that impact they're having on the ocean and the pollution and all of those things that come with it. So I think that's also quite important, is when you think of that collaborative effort, bring someone who represents those different sectors as well, because they need to also understand the bigger impact. And I know a lot of them are all about the money, but they need to understand that that is not a sustainable way to run their business either. So that's quite important. And then I think everything's been mentioned. I think the school learners, the activities that's been done. So really put a bigger focus on the consumer, the public, the tourist, how they're being educated, because the school kids, the learners, we have covered. There's a lot of initiatives out there, but really the everyday guy on the street, how do we reach them and how do we educate them?
Kate, do you still have your hand up for something else to say, or can we move? No, down.
Sorry.
That's fine. Pauline, you had your hand up for a second there. Do you still want to say something? Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to say that in terms of the boat industry that uses boats to go out for the visitors, they are very aware of that. And there are nationally, all of you know, there are trends looking at green energy to propeller boats forward. So, and Green Cape is working on that. Yeah, so there's much work being done in that area. It's just not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, they're great. I wanted to also, I mean, unfortunately, Lindani left, otherwise I would have targeted him, but a space like the V&A for an open day would be phenomenal. I mean, I've been down there a few weekends in a row over the last few weeks, and I mean, allowing open spaces for certain projects and funds to actually showcase themselves and get the public walking through it would be great. And with V&A being so highly visited, that could be an amazing opportunity. So definitely we'll try grab David Green when I see him tonight, or someone down there, or Andre Blaine, to see if we can do something with him as well. And just giving them that opportunity to use the space free of charge to sort of, educate people and get people involved would be awesome on your weekends, and try to funnel people through. But I wanted to mention something, and it's something that I think about a lot when I just even drive around the city. I used to be based in London, and I would do big events in funny parts of the world. And one of the places I used to do an event in was in Almaty, which is in Kazakhstan. And they've got this thing where every year, and I think it's mainly because of their environment and the snow and stuff like that, but every year they have this special day, and the whole city stops working. It's actually over a week. The whole city stops working. Schools have their certain days, companies have their days, etc. And they spend this week cleaning up the city. Which is a phenomenal thing. I mean, I guess it had the ex-Soviet rule and, very structured and a way of controlling people. But it was a phenomenal exercise. And you would drive around the city and you would see a whole lot of kids fixing up a curb and cleaning all the packaging off there on the one day, and planting flowers and stuff. I think it comes together with sort of like spring coming and the ice and snow melting and so the havoc that's wreaked over the winter. But it was a phenomenal thing, and very massively publicized. Companies got a lot of exposure from it, so they would sponsor a certain area and sponsor all the plants in a certain area, etc. And I know these things happen sporadically in Cape Town, but it would be great to see something similar happening, with sort of government leading the way on things like that. Example, in Durban, they used to always have that big walk that went through the city, but it was people were walking, but it would be very nice if people were cleaning at the same time. So it's something to think of. But programs like this will, hopefully we can get them going. Then just looking at sort of mass tourism and alternative, sort of your larger tourist operators, your cruise ships and big resorts and stuff like that, and sort of enticing them for alternative sports and activities, and not just shark cage diving and things like that. Advice from you guys. I mean, how can we get these guys talking about these and involved and part of smaller projects and understanding about that? I guess it takes another workshop or program where we invite the right people to it, but any ideas?
I have an idea. I mean, I don't know the permitting regime for cruises, but there's obviously a significant permitting regime. And the V&A, someone was mentioning earlier, Bruce, I think, about how they'd expanded their supplier list. So it might just be useful. I mean, maybe it's just 2 conversations, or maybe there's someone at the V&A who's accessible, who's willing to chat about how it all works, just to understand what their obligations are, firstly, and what the anticipated numbers are. And then there are lots of best practices around the world. If one wanted to, have a proactive discussion with Cape Town Tourism and the V&A and a couple of key players later on. But I think firstly, just understanding what rules they already have to comply with and kind of the obligations, and that might be quite interesting. There might be some space in there to work with them to look at what's possible, because one doesn't want to be too punitive, of course, as well, especially since we're trying to get tourism back. I mean, yeah, it's not a neat issue, this of cruise liners.
Bruce, so a thumbs up from you. Can you put a little bit insight into that?
Yeah, I think, Kate, I think the Michael's surname, he's with Andre and Josh at the V&A. He runs the terminal. He would be a great guy to give us some insight. But I mean, the numbers are quite phenomenal, in fact, of cruise ships. Certainly this coming summer, we're talking in the hundreds, maybe 130, 140 ships that will visit. There are at least 2 or 3 companies that are going to base their cruise ships permanently in the Cape, doing sort of 5-day trips, Mossel Bay, to go and see wildlife, and then up the west coast of Namibia to go into the desert and back again. So it's absolutely enormous, but it would be very interesting to find out what the criteria might be. I know we're part of the sort of the World Cruise Ship Forum, so that would be the same issues that they would be dealing with in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean, in Florida, other areas where obviously pristine beaches and clean water, and then the damage and problems with mass tourism, is felt as well. So I think he'd be a good guy to have Michael from the V&A to come and address us.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, I mean, it's something like that would be also sort of leaning into social development and impact as well. So again, working with the V&A on that space to say, okay, let's give these NPOs and stuff or NGOs an opportunity to showcase where all these tourists are coming off the boats, and small business as well. The likes of Zandile is running diving tours and stuff up the coast, and getting her prime location to try develop them. That's always the toughest thing, marketing yourselves. So let's possibly do that. Alushka?
So at the moment, that's a bigger picture way to look at the potential cruise industry. And as Kate says, it's a very, very big industry, but it's also a very tough one to nod from the activity and experience driven side of things. So at the moment, we have a very nice niche, which is the person coming with a cruise ship but wanting to do things on their own. So not using the cruise ship agenda or itineraries and the products they're selling. So in Cape Town, for example, a lot of the guides, a lot of the tour operators, the smaller guys already know some of these products, but they are open to knowing more, because we are getting those consumers, we are getting those inquiries of the mindful traveler who wants to do these things that they have never experienced before. Many of them are coming back to Cape Town second, third time, so they've done all the generic touristy things. So that is also a way of the educating side of things, to look at those people who are on the ground at the moment, who want to know what these new products are, how they can also involve the new way the tourist is looking at things. And that is one way we're getting those consumers on the cruise ships. And from that way, it's smaller, but it's another way in. Because to get onto those itineraries, they're 3 years in advance for cruise ships. It's going to be a difficult task right now to make an impact. So I think looking at it from inside and the smaller way of getting things rolling for this season even, that opportunity is there, and we should work with that. And then, yes, the bigger picture stuff can happen, but that is really a long-term goal. And I don't foresee that coming to fruition in time for your conference. Sorry, just a damp blanket there. But if the conversation starts, I think the potential is for sure there.
Awesome, thanks, Alushka. Pauline, you had your hand up as well.
Yes, there is on a national level, I just complete the policy that's quite nice and focuses on our local communities can become involved in all of those kind of nice things. But then also there's the cruise ship committee that consists of DDAT. We fund it and province funds it, and it's being managed by Westgrow, and the private sector sits on that, and they are really doing good work. So I think it's worthwhile to get them in to talk to what are they doing for Cape Town. The waterfront is pretty much part of that as well, but they're also a role player, and the waterfront is a role player. Yeah. but that you can also talk to them.
Awesome. Thanks, Pauline. Great. And then, yeah, I mean, finally, the last point I wanted to add and chat about, and Kate mentioned it right at the end, was getting the rest of Africa involved. I mean, the starting point is who do we get involved? And that comes down to, I mean, put your hand up if you know someone in Africa that you can connect with. To start and bring in anyone?
Rex, I mean, one way to do it might be to, since the V&A is such a powerful player and it's in many ways a very progressive business partner, right? I mean, they must have, I would think looking at other waterfront developments might be an interesting way in, because that can be an enabler of so many other things. So maybe there are a couple of major port cities or waterfront developments where one would want to have a session on that, and you could bring in people on that. That strikes me as an interesting way and relevant given the location of the conference and Blue Cape and all of that.
I mean, it's a great idea. Use Cape Town and V&A as the model, which is awesome. I mean, I do some things with other industries as well, and we've brought out a lot of African. It's sort of game specific, but we brought out a lot of Africans to South Africa to sort of develop their skill and give them access to international markets. But their cross collaboration is huge, and the opportunity there. So, I mean, that's why I was mentioning. I mean, if people know someone else in Africa that they can bring to us and introduce us to. We are getting funding from tourism, or we're hoping to get that approved again, but looking to do it. And we prefer to spend the money on African partners to come in, because it's an African event. We're trying to build connection between the countries. So please let us know. What I've also noticed, and you know, there's quite a few ocean conferences happening around the world, but it's very, very, very rare that anyone from Africa is involved in this. I see that the UN Ocean Conference was done in partnership between Kenya and Portugal, but to be honest, I only knew that now. Before then, I just thought it was all about Lisbon and Portugal getting a great conference at for their city. But when I looked into other ocean conferences, there's like the Oceans Conference that goes around the world. There's never, I think they've done something like 30 or 40 events, and nowhere close to going to anywhere in Africa. Even southern Spain or Turkey hasn't done a conference. They haven't done a conference. So getting them coming out and joining conferences is key in doing something in Africa. And I think maybe that's where we get someone like WESGRO or Convention Bureau. They need to also start pushing those guys and working with us to push them to bring them as part of our event, or launch their own event is also great, and run them. But then also on the other side is we need Africans speaking at those conferences. And if we look at their speakers list, there's usually nothing being spoken about this massive continent in the middle of the world and what's happening on there. It's kind of the forgotten lands. So I think from your guys' side, I would push, and a lot of people don't know this, but conferences are always looking for content. So they're always looking for people to come tell them something different that they've never heard of before. So I would advise you guys to put your name down, contact them, say something. They will a lot of the time possibly pay for your flights and accommodation over to those markets, and want to work with you and hear about stuff. So I would say something in sort of that vein. So let's try to get Africa on the map in that space as well. And then, as I mentioned, if you know someone in Africa or you know a project, please let us know, because we want to include them more. We did take a step of trying to include more of Africa, and we had quite a few different African delegates come in November last year. But we want to push that even further, especially with us aligning with the ocean race next year, and having so much exciting stuff happening on the ocean over that time. But then again, as well, just to on that note, if there's other events happening that Bruce, I know you guys have connections with a lot of people and lots of different sporting events and stuff happening and ideas, and we're working very closely with the other Bruce who does the Head of the World, the Ocean Race local partner. And if there's ideas from you guys as well, who you think or what industries you think you can include in it, or sports and tourism connections, we'd love to have those people involved and give them exposure. So please let us know. Is there anything else that people want to have a chat about? We didn't really get to sort of wildlife and tourism and sort of getting oceans recognized there, but I mean we pretty did touch on sort of how and we need to get it a little bit more highlighted when that comes through sort of a lot of marketing and projects like this. But anything else anyone wants to bring up? Oh, good. Let's have a look there. Okay, great. So I think this was awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. If you aren't or haven't seen the invite, we are having our event this evening. So my next trick is rushing off down to the V&A and starting to set up a venue. So please do come and join us. It starts at 6. It's going to finish at 9. We'll have some speeches. We're going to do a nice networking little game as well to make sure everyone meets, or as many people as possible meet each other. Drinks and food are on us tonight, so please do come and eat it, because otherwise I'm going to go home with loads of Tupperware of nice snacks for my kids. But please come and join us. If there's anyone that you can think of as well that you would like to bring down with you, please let us know. You can drop Mario a message or myself. Vince, I see you've connected with me on LinkedIn. That's rad. Please, everyone else do if we're not connected already. So please, put the word out there. The whole point of this is just so that the industry comes together and chats. We've been doing so many of these webinars with different things that we want people to meet in person. So much more gets done, and you get so much more confident with working with people once you meet them in person. So that's the whole point. And then off the back of this, please, let's not stop thinking about what we discussed today now. I know you are all involved in the ocean space as well and are constantly dealing with your challenges, but you've heard about other people's challenges now. So let's try work together and see what we can do more together. And just, if you are unsure of something or you need a connection to somebody, that's what we're here. Please put us in contact with them, and we will be looking to run more workshops similar to this on the lead up as well to Ocean Innovation Africa next year. And the idea as well, just so you know, is that we got to run the conference side, which will be 2 days, but we are going to be putting a whole lot of in-person workshops together with people that are going to be around. So that's a big focus of our event. So taking this off the screen and into a nice setting with coffee and some snacks. So thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully see you this evening, and Mario will also be in touch, and we'll also be in touch in one-on-one with you guys over the next few months.
Thanks, Rex. Thanks.